Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside the Cage, where we bring you the latest and exciting updates of UFC. First, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. As you know, the UFC never fails to keep us on our toes, and here it is. UFC 295 is happening on November 11th, and it's already headlined by a heavyweight title showdown between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. But wait, there's more. Dana White just dropped a bombshell. He mentioned it as a co-main event that's set to determine the new light heavyweight champion. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Jiří Procházka and Alex Pereira are going head-to-head for that coveted belt. Since the legendary Jon Jones left the division in 2020, the light heavyweight belt has been a bit like a hot potato. There was one successful title defense, and that was Jan Blachowicz fending off Israel Adesanya in March 2021. Fast forward, Blachowicz lost the belt to Glover Teixeira. Teixeira passed it on to Procházka, and then, well, Procházka had to let it go due to what Dana White called the worst shoulder injury in UFC history. Ouch, that sounds painful. Procházka hasn't stepped into the octagon since June 12th, 2022. And the saga continues. After a somewhat controversial draw between Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, and Jamahal Hill's victory over Teixeira, followed by an Achilles tendon tear, we're back to Procházka. Now, Pereira, who's known for his stunning middleweight win against Adesanya, is leaping to light heavyweight. So UFC 295 promises to be quite the spectacle. With Procházka and Pereira stepping into the octagon, we're in for a showdown that could define the future of the light heavyweight division. It's going to be a wild ride. Israel Adesanya just gave us a peek into his mind following his recent loss to Sean Strickland at UFC 293. It's always interesting to hear what goes on in the head of a top-tier fighter, right? So Adesanya spilled the beans on his YouTube channel, and he jumped into the matter of what he was thinking during that bout, and how Tarzan Strickland managed to snatch the victory and his precious belt. Adesanya didn't sugarcoat it. Generally, he didn't exactly call it a nightmare, but he did compare the whole experience to a bad dream. Frustrating, to say the least. Whereas Adesanya couldn't execute his game plan as he wanted, all thanks to Strickland's meticulously planned strategy. It's like Strickland had Adesanya's strengths and moves on lockdown. How did I feel in there? Like a bad dream, Israel Adesanya said. It wasn't a nightmare. A nightmare is like, oh, stick. A nightmare is like you're scared. It was just like you try and hit the guy, and it just feels like noodle arms. Just like, what the F-geck? So yeah, I just felt like that. Like a bad dream. The feeling I had watching it was completely different, and I called Coach Eugene Behrman right afterward, and we talked. And the same thing, I'm quietly confident. While Israel Adesanya had some pretty candid insights into why things didn't quite go his way in that fight against Sean Strickland at UFC 293. He's not one to make excuses, but he did pinpoint a couple of key factors. First off, Adesanya's known for his precision and timing, so when that's thrown off, it can mess with your game. On the other hand, Strickland's fighting style isn't exactly conventional. His unorthodox techniques and those piercing jabs of his, yeah, they left Adesanya scratching his head a bit. So there you have it. Adesanya's giving credit where it's acknowledging that Strickland's approach played a significant role in the outcome of the fight. It's all part of the game in the UFC. Adaptability and strategy can make all the difference. Next, Anthony Smith has a point when he talks about transparency in MMA judging. The moment when Mike Bell dropped that head-scratching 10-8 scorecard in favor of Alexa Grasso during Valentina Shevchenko's epic battle, it left everyone baffled. This is the reason fans and fighters were left hanging. Undeniably, it's like the million-dollar question that nobody's answering. And it's not just a one-off thing. The Nevada State Athletic Commission doesn't typically address scoring concerns, and judges rarely step up to explain themselves voluntarily. Recently, he said in an interview,
I really think it would shut a lot of us up. And I think they believe the opposite will happen, that we'll fire everybody up and give us a bunch more ammo. And I have a perfect example. On today's Wednesday, on Monday, Michael and I are recording the podcast, and one of the subjects that came up was the ESPN middleweight rankings. They still have Israel Adesanya #1 and Sean Strickland at like 5.
That's crazy.
And I thought that was crazy. So me and Michael are kind of like going off about it, how crazy this is. And I said, you know what? I'll just text someone that I know from ESPN and say, like, and they're on this panel that comes up with these rankings. And I'll just ask. And so I asked while we're on air, and I get a response. And it's a long, very, very thoughtful, very logical explanation on why those rankings are the way that they are. I still disagreed with it, but I couldn't argue with the logic.
While explaining his whole point, Smith showed continued disagreement with the rankings. He acknowledges that he couldn't argue with the logical reasoning presented in the response. Quite impressive. Guys, if you're enjoying the video, we'd love your support. Just hit that subscribe button to motivate us to bring you more exciting content. The drama never seems to end in the world of MMA, does it? So here's the deal. With all the fuss about those 10 to 8 rounds lighting up the MMA scene, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz also jumped right back into the spotlight. First, Conor decided to stir the pot by revisiting their epic rematch at UFC 202 from back in 2016. You know, that fight had more twists and turns to just add fuel to the fire. Was round 1 where I dropped Nate once, and round 2 where I dropped Nate twice, scored 10 to 8s? They should have been, it was a cakewalk on points, McGregor wrote on X. On the other side of the coin, there is Nate Diaz. He wasn't about to let Conor McGregor have the last word, not by a long shot. Nate, with that signature Diaz swagger, fired back at the Irishman. You see, in their first epic showdown at UFC 196, Nate pulled off a stunning second-round submission win against McGregor. It was a massive upset at the time. So, Nate was reminding everyone that he already had a win over Conor before that thrilling rematch at UFC 202. Surely, the MMA fans can't get enough of it. When I killed you off, I should have never given you a rematch, Diaz replied. I never get a rematch, especially when I don't lose like in our second fight or my last fight. I just let a pussy run off into the sunset as you won. Live with it or both pussies. Although it's been more than 2 years since Conor McGregor graced the octagon. You'll get your rematch, lad, the Irishman added. He has every intention of completing the trilogy with Diaz. Last but not least, Aljamain Sterling is sitting backstage at UFC 292, trying to find solace in a slice of pizza after his tough loss to Sean O'Malley. But then, right at the moment, out of nowhere, Dana White strolls up and casually asks, "Hey, you doing all right? Talk about a surprise." It was kind of like, I know he's probably looking at me, just, I don't know what he was thinking, Sterling said Wednesday on the MMA Hour. I know he was happy. How could he not be? I mean, the Golden Goose O'Malley won in a fight matchup that he legitimately, I hate saying that because then it sounds like I'm discredited guy, but this is the way they say that 8 or 9 out of 10 times thing, right? Aljamain Sterling is scratching his head, wondering why Dana White seems to have him on his radar. In a recent interview, the UFC bigwig dropped some comments, suggesting that Sterling's public decisions might have taken a toll on his popularity, even though he's a decent person behind the scenes. If there's anything I've said about Dana, like he said, he's cool in person, Sterling responded. I'm going to take his words and use it with him. He's cool in person. But then, I don't know. It's like as soon as he gets the mic to say anything about me, I never once heard the guy say anything positive about me. Meanwhile, Aljamain Sterling might be feeling that firsthand. He's a fighter after all, and that means taking risks. In his latest match against Sean O'Malley, he made a quick turnaround and things didn't go his way. However, Sterling isn't shying away from the fact that his attitude played a part in that loss. He knew he was taking a chance, and he's owning up to it. But he's also got a positive perspective on it. While the loss stings, the paycheck he got from the fight helps soothe that pain. It's a classic case of finding the silver lining in a tough situation. Alright guys, that's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. See you at the next one. Until then, goodbye.